Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, the Honorable Lecturer Pak Joko. Good afternoon, my beloved friends. Today, me, Lili Sulistianti, will present a topic about understanding and applying second language acquisition. The boundaries of second language acquisition. When constitute the boundaries of second language acquisition is perhaps the area of greatest contention. As we have seen, SLA was originally positioned as a cognitive enterprise. Example, language is viewed as a mental construct and acquisition as taking place inside the mind of the learner. And the task facing the researcher is that of identifying the mental processes, such as noticing, that account for how learners extract information from the input and how interlanguage systems develop over time. This perspective emphasizes the universal aspects of second language acquisition as manifested, for example, in orders and sequences of acquisition of a second language grammar. We can look at chapter 4. For some researchers, SLA is necessarily as a branch of cognitive science. Long and Doughty, 2003, and page 4. And then for other researchers, however, second language acquisition is primarily as a social phenomenon. Research methodology in second language acquisition. In Alice 2006, distinguished three different ways of defining acquisition and discussed the different ways of measuring acquisition. The first is acquisition as emerge. When acquisition is conceptualized in this way, it is necessary to show that learners can demonstrate they use a particular second language feature that they could not use previously. Second, acquisition as increased control. When acquisition is conceptualized as increased control, a metric applied is target language accuracy. For example, the extent to which the learner demonstrates again in the ability to use a specific language features in accordance with target language norms. Next, acquisition as progress along an acquisitional sequence. All second language acquisition theories acknowledge that there are developmental trajectories as learners' interlanguages advance. To investigate this, longitudinal studies involving a series of data collection points are required. Next is the goal of second language acquisition. Ortega, 2012, argued that second language acquisition should not just be contrasted with first language, monolingual acquisition from birth, but also with bilingual acquisition from birth. She made the case for what she called the bi or multilingual turn for SLA. That is, making the goal of SLA not just the study of a second language, but of how later learned language figure in making a person bi or multilingual. The next expert, Cook, 1991, has argued for investigating multi-competence on the grounds that the second language that the first language and the second language should not be treated as separate linguistic systems but as intertwined, each affecting the other. In general, however, SLA has continued to focus on how learners acquire a second language. Now, what do we know about second language acquisition? The first is second language acquisition is complex. It is complex because a multitude of factors influence how a second language develops. Individual difference factors such as language aptitude and motivation. Next, there are universal patterns of second language acquisition. Long, 1990, considered this one of the well-established findings that a theory of second language acquisition needs to explain. Learners of different ages with and without instruction in foreign and second language setting follow similar developmental sequences for such items as English negation. Long, 1990, on page 659. However, not all SLA researchers are in agreement with what Lantoff called the universal acquisition hypothesis. It is clearly incompatible with sociocultural theory, which emphasizes the importance of mediation in enabling learners to overcome the limitation of their own cognitive resources. Second language systems are variable. At any stage of development, learners deploy a variety of forms for realizing a particular grammatical structure. For example, a learner may have begun to produce negative utterances containing an auxiliary. For example, Maria is not coming today, but at the same time continues to use the earlier acquired no plus verb construction as in Maria no coming today. Next is about the learner's starting age plays an important role. According to the critical period hypothesis, native levels of ability are only possible if learning commences within a critical period. The existence of a critical period is disputed on the grounds that there is no clear discontinuity between learning during period and after it ends, but rather than falling off in ability. Second is a sensitive period claims that children are more likely to achieve native like ability, but acknowledge that learners who start as adults may also sometimes succeed in doing so. Psychological factors influence all aspects of second language acquisition. Ellis elected to focus on two factors. They are language aptitude and motivation. First, language aptitude is composed of different cognitive abilities, such as phonemic coding ability, language analytical ability, and rote learning ability, while motivation is comprised of the learner's motivational orientation. For example, the reason a learner has for needing, for wanting to learn a second language, and then behavioral motivation and attributional motivation. Next is social interaction plays a crucial role in second language acquisition. According to Albright, 1984, argued that interaction is the fundamental fact of classroom pedagogy because everything that happens in the classroom happens through a process like person-to-person interaction, page 156. While emphasizing the importance of interaction, we need to also recognize that not all learning is dependent on the opportunity to interact in the second language. Learning can also occur through exposure to non-interactive input, for example, through extensive reading. Second language is a cognitive phenomenon. Drawing on Reber's research and Ellis 1994 proposed that implicit learning and explicit learning are fundamentally different. The implicit learning is learning that takes place without intention and without awareness. The explicit knowledge that results is metalinguistic in nature. In the case of grammar, it consists of rules that learners can draw on when formulating. Cognitive theories of SLA draw on two other important constructs imported from cognitive psychology. They are attention and working memory. Attention takes place in the learner's working memory, which is seen as limited in capacity. This explains why learners often fail to attend to second language features in the input or fail to access knowledge stored in long-term memory in their output. Next, second language acquisition is also a social phenomenon. Drawing on Vygotsky's work, it treats development as potentially always open to external influence rather than cognitively predetermined. The key concept is mediation. Mediation is the process by which culturally determined artifacts that are deployed to regulate activity. The primary artifact is social interaction. Instructions helps acquisition. Alice distinguished two broad types of instruction: explicit instruction and implicit instruction. Explicit instructions directs attention to target language forms and caters to intentional learning and provides learners with explicit information about target language features. Implicit instruction attracts attention to linguistic forms while learners are engaged in performing communicative activities and caters to incidental learning. And the last here is about applying second language acquisition. The first is basing pedagogical proposals on the findings of SLA. SLA provides hard evidence which should be used to advise teachers about what approaches and techniques work best. Long, 1990. One way in which researchers have tried to make the result of their research of practical value to teachers is by an implication section tacked on to the end of a research report. A more promising theory adopted by Crescent, his theory, the input hypothesis, has had a considerable influence on language pedagogy. Second, practitioner research and second language acquisition. The second way of making use of the findings of SLA is to encourage teachers to participate in investigating second language learning in their own classroom. One is to carry out small-scale action research projects to investigate specific problems that teachers have identified in their own teaching. See Byrne, 2010. The second way is to encourage teachers to replicate an existing SLA study. Exploring language pedagogy through SLA. The third way of making use of SLA for language pedagogy is to take pedagogic issues at the starting point and then scrutinize them from the perspective of SLA. Ellis and Sintani 2013 adopted this approach. The key pedagogic topics are how to teach grammar and vocabulary, the importance of authenticity in teaching materials, error correction, and the use of students' first language in the classroom. Alright, I think that's all about understanding and applying second language acquisition. If there is some mistake, I say so sorry. Thank you for the attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.